everyone. This is part 2 of our conversation with Rodrick, and we were talking about left-hand, right-hand path, duality, plus also just how it both makes sense and doesn't make sense. So let's go ahead and continue our conversation.
Yeah, so I was saying previously, there's two problems with the whole, with the dichotomy that we're talking about. So the first problem I was saying is the fact that, what was I saying? The terms are less defined. Oh, it's because people are victim. They have victimhoods. They have a lot of trauma. So, so that right there will inspire them to go ahead and start doing this type of magic, this type of occult work. And then the second problem is also language. Language is a huge problem, because there's a lot of Abrahamic terms that are used in these ancient grimoires. So, like the Bible, people can misinterpret these things too, even though they've been translated dozens of times by different writers. So one example is this. I'm going to go ahead and use the left-hand path work for another example because I feel that this is very appropriate. And I talk to lots of people about this, a lot. So when people talk about demonic invocations and different workings like that, if you're going to go there's two ways of doing it, really. You can do the goetic way, the lesser key of Solomon or the greater key, where you will use names of God to conjure up the demons. So the names of God will protect you. That's like the idea. You have this triangle of protection. But the other way is the demonology way of doing it, where they're like, well, trying to constrain these demons is quite disrespectful. So we're not going to do it that way because I don't want to be mean to them. So I'll be nicer to them and I'll just take those names out. And so, these kind of ethics kind of gets involved in it, and I know there's a lot of controversy and there's probably somebody listening now that may not like me for saying that. I'm not advocating one or the other, by the way. I'm just stating things as they are. So, so I don't know. I hope I didn't ramble on too much, but there's like a dichotomy and it comes with language though. People really, like you were saying earlier, there were Asura, which not many left-hand path occultists are going to really even know what that is unless, they have an interest in that in the Vedas. Or should they use demon? Should they use daemon? What should they use? And I think that whatever your intent is, whatever your purest, truest intent as a magician, as a spiritual practitioner, is what's going to drive you to whatever method that you do. However, the problem comes down to dogma. Sometimes we get comfortable in a system too long. We should all, in my opinion, and I'm sure you agree with this, as magicians, as sorcerers, whatever you call yourself, shamans, whatever, we should always be learning and growing. That means not only focusing on our accomplishments, but focusing on what we don't know. Focusing on some things that we're not quite comfortable with. And that doesn't mean, if you're a person if you're Buddhist, when I say get out of your comfort zone, I'm not saying go and do the Vajrayana Chud ritual. Look that up. I'm not saying anything like that. But I mean, getting out of your comfort zone, meaning expand yourself, learn a little bit more. I don't mean jump around from system to system, but whatever type of practice you're doing, you want to learn about the things that may not interest you as much. So an example is if you're a ceremonial magician that loves planetary invocation, you're so good at it, you're really great at astrology. Well, get out of your comfort zone and learn about deities for a little bit. Learn about Greek gods and goddesses for a little bit. Or learn about Kemetic or Egyptian the pantheon from that. Learn something different because that will help you integrate language, which is the problem.
That's very true, because what I get frustrated in is that, so I've studied the Abrahamic traditions quite a bit. I've read the Bible, of course, and I've interpreted some of it for myself and on a podcast. But it's strange because even people who don't like the Bible, let's say you're working with demons, they'll still use the Bible as a center of gravity. They'll be like, okay, these are the terms that are, polluting and controlling everybody, and we're just gonna take ownership of these terms, like demon. and we're going to use that term to fight back against that center of gravity. You're still on the same planet. You're still engaging with that center of gravity, rather than trying to find a new body, and I'm using metaphors here, not actual new body, but a new body of information or new relationship to both the beings that you work with and to your inner self. You're still working by the same code that you despise. So do you want to continue to play by their game, or do you want to do something else? Because it does come back to language. So we have the word demon, in Greek, daemon, can mean different things. A lot of left-hand pastors say, these are just the different old gods have been classified as demons. I'm really confused as to why the same terms are used and why other terms aren't adopted. It's almost like because of the animosity with the center of gravity that is the church, that is what left-hand pastors revolve around or relate to, even if it's in the negative. And deciding for yourself, because a lot of these entities, a lot of these beings, they're only using the names from the Bible because left-hand pastors are insistent upon them, and people who believe in the Bible are insistent upon them. But relating to these beings in a different way would be a better path, a better course. Because do we really think that just because in the Bible it says this is the one name of a being, that is their only name, that's the only way to relate to them? No, it doesn't make any sense. But choosing to use your enemy's code and trying to claim it as your own, it's a path to failure. Because if that understanding is dying, if that language is dying, if that understanding of these beings is dying, just because you do something opposite of that, that doesn't mean that that you're not gonna die too. That your understanding isn't gonna die too. You're tapping into an original understanding and trying to combat it rather than doing your own thing. And that's always confused me. I'm not sure why left-hand pastors are so consumed by the Bible and relating to it in a way that is just counter rather than more nebulous and separate from. It's almost like the Bible is a gravity well, and both people who believe in it, Christians and left-hand pastors, that is their center. Perhaps we should relate to these beings, if you believe they're more than demons, than something other than what the Bible says. That's just my idea.
Okay, so when you say center of gravity, you mean you're basically saying that, for an example, excuse me, that using a term like demon will be just hung up on the Abrahamic traditions and the Abrahamic terms.
If you understand it as an adversarial term, we're like, okay, they view it as that adversarial term, so I'm going to view it as my heart term, my compassionate term, my relation term. You're still using the Bible as a center of gravity.
Okay, I see what you're saying. It's similar to what you're saying is similar to Elric, who has been on my podcast before. He was, I think that, the first time I had him on, he said something about, I asked him about Satan. I'm like, what do you think about people working with Satan? He's like, well, that's basically the dark Christianity. It's Christianity that's reversed. He had something kind of, those weren't his exact words, but he said something very, very similar to that. I'm like, oh, okay, I get it now.
What's really weird about Satan is that the understanding of Satan, the term goes way back, but we get the idea as far as what Satan is from Surtur, from the Norse pantheon, a being of fire. He lives in a realm of perfect light and perfect fire. And if you work with him and if he likes you, then you're not going to be scorched. We get a lot of the ideas of what Satan is in the realm that exists from Muspelheim as well as Surtur. Christianity has blended this because Christianity is known for, bringing other cultures in or renaming things so that it's easier for the population to accept. So the idea of Satan and fire, the sad truth is that, there's, I think, 3 or 4 mentions of hell being fire in the Bible. Very few. But most of our idea of Satan literally just comes from an adaptation of Surtur from the Norse pantheon, living in Muspelheim. So, who really is, what really is Satan? Is it just an adaptation by the church so that we can understand what it is, people in Europe and, Northwestern Europe? Or is the Satan that we understand something that's completely commercialized? Maybe it's completely commercialized. Maybe it's something that's just adapted rather than most people are trying to understand Satan. Even Satanists, they're thinking of him in the role of searcher. Maybe he's something more, because that's usually the adaptation that the church does. Because Sol Invictus was the holiday that is Christmas was originally Sol Invictus, the god of soldiers in the Roman Empire, not Republic Empire. Well, it might have been the Republic as well. And then the idea of Christmas, the adopting of the tree came from Germany and the Yuletide and all that. It's a piecemeal. Yeah. There's many piecemeal traditions that we.
It's very dramatic.
Yeah. It's piecemeal, and it's all tied to Christ. Which, by the way, Caesar Borgia. The reason why Christ looks like he does, like obviously looks very Italian, pale skin, blue eyes. It's because I can't remember what pope it was, but the pope that was the father of Caesar Borgia decided that, hey, maybe we should just paint Jesus as the visage of my son, and then it just stuck.
Jesus stuck.
Never looked like white Jesus that you see. That's Caesar Borgia. And by the way, he thought himself as the reincarnation of Mars on Earth, and he's going to bring cleansing to the Earth. Very pagan. But that's the idea of Jesus that we see. It's a piecemeal thing. So our understanding should not just counter that. It should be beyond that. Because we're countering something that's false to begin with. That's it.
Well, these things happen in probably the bulk of world traditions. Because as we share information, as the world has gotten smaller over the past 2,000 years, 2,500 years even, people will paint. Just take Buddhism for getting out of the left-hand path discussion for a moment and take Buddhism. You look at the Buddha statues in China, look far different from the ones in India. Completely different. Are you talking about the lucky Buddha, or the Buddha with the cloth I'm just talking about the Sakyamuni Buddha, just the regular Siddhartha Sakyamuni Buddha, like those. Yeah, the other ones were just definitely added into the pantheon later on, like a Hote or Bodhidharma, Dhammo, but just a regular ones. That just seems to be a trend that in major religions, the religions that don't get wiped out. They either, very few of them stay 100% pure. They always bring something else from another system or religion into it. Buddhism in Japan, they mix some Shinto beliefs in there. And then when you get to Western esoteric traditions, let's just take the Golden Dawn, for instance, a very great example. The Golden Dawn is like the trifecta of Hermeticism, Kabbalah, and it just kind of mixes it all together so perfectly.
Did the Golden Dawn draw a lot from the cult of Thelema or Thelema?
Thelema came after.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Thelema is considered modern magic, but the Golden Dawn is also considered modern magic. Yeah. So it just. Yeah. There's always just a borrowing. So I think you're onto something when you say let's keep to the pure origin of things. I know you didn't say it in those exact words, but that's
at one point.
Yeah, that's rather difficult to do. It's not impossible. So going back to the Satan thing, I'm thinking if a person really wanted to work with the satanic current, the pure, unadulterated, non-Levian current, adversarial current, I would just say Hebrew. Well, the adversarial current will be looking at whatever the dominant religion is right now, not back then, but right now, which is the same as it was when those things are kind of being written. Christianity, some sort of Abrahamic faith, and they would basically just take the role of they would agree at this, the role of the serpent in there. Yeah, because he was the adversary to God in the garden. You know, it's like, okay, this is the adversary because this is the majority. I'm going to be the
Knowledge
minority.
versus the blindness that the light provides when you just accept that blind faith being. Knowledge versus blind faith and blindness by light. Is that
Okay.
correct?
Yeah. Right.
Because the knowledge serpent thing pops up in multiple cultures. Like there's a reason why we have two serpents that go around for
Yeah.
hospitals and things like that.
Yeah.
It's Nagas in India. But
Right.
Nagas were the Greeks that. Well, it originally came from the Greeks that moved to India, and usually we get Poseidon from the Hindus, actually. But anyway, go ahead.
No. I mean, you're right though. You know, I mean, I was pretty much finished with my point though. But like, I was just saying, if you're going to be the adversary, you will just be the rebel against the dominant religion, whatever that is. So right now, the dominant religion is still Christianity, but
Is it? Is it? I feel like maybe it
yeah,
might be
in
like
America it is.
I feel like it's a trifecta of Abrahamic beliefs because they feed on each other
They
and
do.
they also war with each other.
They do, but I was going to say though that the up and coming and emerging dominant religion is science. That's the new one.
Well, it was at one point, and now it's up and coming again. And science is
Yeah.
starting to get into cognitive issues. That will prove certain meditative techniques and mind expansion. But anyway, yes.
But yeah. So right now, I mean, here in America, if you live in the U.S. and Canada, it's still Christianity. I mean, yeah, there's a lot. I would agree with you that all the Abrahamic faiths have a humongous influence around the world. Even and actually, this is a fun factoid. China is getting more Christianized. Believe it or not, there's
The Communist
growth in
Party is
it.
really trying to prevent that, but
They
they've done
are
a good
trying to
job till
prevent it.
now.
They're probably going to do whatever they can in their power. But like, think about South Korea. South Korea became Christian
Easy.
really quickly in like 30 years. Like most people just converted. Like
They
so,
didn't have another option though. It's like, okay, we have to either accept American ideas or we get destroyed by North Korea. So they're placed in an impossible situation. And I'm sure there's plenty of still Buddhist South Koreans, but they're placed in a situation where it's like either we conform with the powers that control us, or we get destroyed by the enemy that will destroy us. There's a no sum game. They had no way to win, so they had to decide. They had to come up. They had to become us, basically.
yeah. I know that's another subject though, but going back to this whole like bridging this dichotomy. So what are some ways that a person can successfully bring the two together?
Oh my God, that's such a good.
I know it's a loaded
So
question.
good
I get
because
it. I totally get it, man.
I have so many ways. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna make this part 2, and then I'm gonna stop it, and then we'll start it again. But
That's fine.
everybody listening, this has been me and Rodrick talking. This is part 2. I'm not exactly sure what the title is gonna be. Well, I did know in the first part, but we'll work it out in the.
Yeah.
I'm gonna work it out in the postscript.